Today we're talking about probability and odds. To find the probability of a certain event occurring, you take the number of favorable outcomes and you put that over the number of possible outcomes. So for example, if we were talking about flipping a coin, there are two possible outcomes when we flip a coin. And of course, one's heads and one's tails. So the probability of getting heads, in this case, there would be one favorable outcome, heads, over the number of possible, which was 2. Okay? And that's probably about the simplest example that we can come up with. We can do other things with dice. If we look at dice, for instance, or a die, because die is the singular of dice, there are 6 possible outcomes with a die. And so if we wanted to find the probability of rolling, say for instance, a 3, then the probability of getting a 3 would be, there's 1 3 on the die, and there's 6 possible outcomes. So the probability of rolling a 3 would be 1 over 6. Going along with that same example with the die, what if we said, what's the probability of rolling odds with a single die? And in that case, there are 3 numbers on a die, 1, 3, and 5, that are odds. So there are 3 favorable outcomes compared to the 6 total. And then we would simplify and get 1/2. If we said, what's the probability of rolling less than 5? Well, there are 4 possible ways we can get less than 5. And out of a total of 6 possible outcomes. And we would simplify that to 2/3. So that's the way probability works. You look at the number of favorable outcomes compared to the number of total possible outcomes. And a lot of these examples that we'll be doing, or problems that we'll be working with, they deal with a deck of cards. So it's important to realize certain things about a deck of cards. First of all, if you have a deck of cards, you have 4 suits. Okay, you have spades, and you have clubs, hearts, and diamonds. And each suit has 13 cards. So it has a 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, Jack, Queen, King, and Ace in every single suit. So those are just some facts about a deck of cards, because then when you do probability with a deck of cards, you'll understand better how many, cards it involves. The next thing we're going to talk about is odds. And odds are similar to probability, but just a little bit different. So similar but different enough that it's easy to get them confused. When we talk about odds, we're talking about the number of successes over the number of failures. So unlike probability, where you had on the bottom the total number of possibilities, now you're going to have the number of failures, so the number of things that don't belong in the group on the top. So let's go back to our example of, let's say a die. Okay, if we roll a die and we want to find out the odds of getting, let's say less than a 4, then what we would do is we would put the number of successes. So there are 3 possibilities on a die that's less than a 4, and there are 3 things that are not less than 4. So we will do 3 over 3. If we were doing probability, it would be 3 over 6. But in odds, it's 3 over 3. So in other words, the 2 things add up to, so this and this, they add up to the total. Whereas on probability, the total was on the bottom. So that's the basic difference between probability and odds. One last thing to remember is, too, that odds, it can be shown as a fraction like probability can, but it could also be shown as having a colon in between the two numbers, like 3:3, or 3 and then the word 2, T-O, 3. So those are all ways of showing odds. Just like with probability, we should express it in simplest form as well. So 3 to 3 would become 1 to 1, or 1 to 1. Let's look at a couple more examples with odds. If I had a spinner that I could spin a number and it would land on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, or 8, and I wanted to find out what the odds were of getting an odd number, let's say. So odds of getting an odd number. Then what I would do is I would count the number of odd numbers on the spinner, and that would be 4. I would count the number that are not odd, and that would also be 4. And 4 over 4 would be simply 1 over 1. And I could express that once again as 1 to 1, or 1 and then a colon 1. So that's, another example of how you could use odds. And that's about it for today. So we'll practice this on our next class day.